You're not special just because you're natural. You're not special just because you're on gear. But should you in fact train differently if you're enhanced? Coach Greg, today's video I'm responding to Dr. Mike Israetel, natural versus enhanced training. Are there any differences? And if so, how do you apply those to your own training? So whether you're natural or enhanced, you can learn from this video. Before going into the video, let me explain this. Whether you're enhanced or natural, your muscles grow in the exact same way. Regardless if you're natural or enhanced, you need water, energy, protein, and a stimulus for muscle growth in order to build that muscle. That stimulus for muscle growth, that is always going to apply to training harder than last time or progressive overload. But should you in fact train differently if you're enhanced? Well, the research for natural training is abundant. However, for enhanced training, not so much. Just think of all the studies they've done over the years. How many involved a bunch of guys on trend and say, hey, go train and let's see what happens? Not very many because of the ethics and the legalities. So most training are done with average participants who are in fact natural. So I would argue it's easier to know what to do if you're natural than if you're enhanced. If you're enhanced, you may in fact need to listen to some bro science because the science on enhanced lifting is not as clear. But let's watch his video and see what he says, see if I agree or disagree.
Enhanced people should probably take longer warm-ups because they're not really big and really strong, and if they rush into training, they can get hurt.
I'm gonna have to agree with this. If you're enhanced, you're more predisposed to getting injured because you're stronger. Your muscles are too strong for the tendons, and so if you just jump in there without warming up properly, there's a much greater chance you're going to get injured than if you're natural. Especially with today's day and age, so many people are ego lifting, so if you are in fact lifting really heavy weights, you want to be more than sure that you're adequately warmed up so that you don't get injured. What is the benefit of being enhanced and trying to build muscle quicker if you're always injured?
Number two difference. Using pre-exhaust more often. So doing some leg extensions, some leg presses before you get to the squats and the lunges, something like that.
I'm going to agree and disagree with this. It's going to depend. If you're super strong and massive like Big Ramy, then perhaps you want to pre-exhaust your quads before doing full-on squats. If he's going to have to squat with 700 pounds, that might be too much and not safe. So if he pre-fatigues the quads by doing leg extensions and can't lift as heavy a weight, only lifts 500 or 600 pounds, a lot less likely to get injured. But not everyone using PDs are the size of Big Ramy. Let us remember this. Most people abusing PDs look like shit. I'm not bullshitting you. Most people on steroids don't look good and are not even close to the size of Big Ramy. This video is the difference between natural and enhanced lifters, not the difference between complete bigotters and freaks like Big Ramy. Not everyone taking PDs or even abusing them have massive muscles and are so strong that they need to pre-exhaust their muscles in order to be safe. So if you're taking SARMs, you're on your first few cycles, and you're of normal strength, not squatting 600 or 700 pounds, you probably don't need to pre-exhaust. However, as we said in statement number 1, please warm up properly. And not only does that mean doing a proper cardiovascular warm-up, for example, 10-15 minutes on the stationary bike or walking, before you actually go into squatting those heavy weights, warm up effectively doing the actual movement you're going to do. The principle of specificity. Do the squat to prepare yourself for the squat. Warm up with the bar, maybe 135. Do a set of that for 15 reps. Then 225, 315, 405, 500 pounds, and so on. Don't jump up too quickly. We watched Noel Diesel train with Larry Wheels, had a plate, 2 plates, 3 plates, 4, dumped the 4 plates. That was not a proper warm-up. Remember, he was doing sets of 5. That's it. You can't warm up doing sets of 5 and jumping a plate each time. If 315 is difficult, probably shouldn't jump to 4 plates. So whether or not you need pre-exhaust, well, that is debatable, but you do need to properly warm up on the lift that you're doing.
Next, fewer low rep sets and more higher rep sets.
Tip number 3, fewer low rep sets. I 100% agree with this. When you're on PDs, you're more likely to get hurt, you're obviously going to be stronger, and your chances of injury go up. The fewer the reps you do at the heavier weight, the greater likelihood you're going to get injured. There's a much greater risk of injury trying to do a 1 rep max on the bench press than doing a set of 15. Everyone and their pet, baby Nakey or Gert, they all know this. So rather than ego lifting and putting on too much weight, trying to max out sets of 5, lighten the weight. Do higher reps. Focus on time under tension. It's not as fun, not as cool, and it's harder, so most people take the easy way out. I've done videos on this in the past. What's harder, powerlifting or bodybuilding? Powerlifting, way easier. It's a lot easier to walk up to the bar with 750 pounds and do it once than have 405 on the bar and try to set the Guinness Book of Records and do it for 50 reps. And so oftentimes people are going to the gym, cutting their reps short, doing partial reps, not getting the proper mind-muscle connection. They're just slamming big weights trying to show off. So rather than lifting heavy weights and potentially getting injured, lighten the weights and do more reps.
For people who are really jacked and enhanced, and by the way, a lot of the drugs actually contribute to that metabolite sequestration. They give you crazy pumps and crazy burns that you wouldn't have without drugs. Sets of 20 to 30 reps are fucking brutal. Whereas for someone who is natty and smaller, they do like set of 25 and they're like, I don't know, man, it just feels like I'm doing a lot of reps. I can't really feel the tension. Yeah, I get a little bit of burn at the end, but not much.
I'm gonna have to agree here. If you're doing multiple sets of 20 to 30 reps to failure, you're just going to be burnt out. In comparison, a natural lifter doing sets in the 20 to 30 range, it's a lot easier for them. They're not going to get the brutal pump, the cramps that make it almost debilitating. I used to take PDs, do a set of squats 15, and I'm laying on the bench with such a massive back cramp that I can't lift for 5 or more minutes. When I'm natural, never ever have this. Especially when taking orals like D-ball, for example, you get crazy back pumps in the lower back, and it's debilitating. You can barely make it through a workout. So if you're enhanced, you have to go easier on those very high reps. My advice, 12 to 15, a compromise. Not super heavy, 5 or less reps, and not super high, 20 to 30. Somewhere in the middle to have balance.
A good idea for folks that are enhanced is to do less dynamic lifting, more pausing.
He also suggests more controlled lifting, pausing the weight at the bottom, slowly lowering the bar to the chest, and controlling the explosive movements. This leads to fewer injuries, and if you're enhanced, you know you're more predisposed to getting hurt. You're stronger. And so it makes a lot of sense. Don't bounce the weights off the chest. Once I started taking PDs, I stopped doing touch and go reps on the bench. Only if the weights were really light would I do that, perhaps 20 or more reps. When I did sets of 10, for example, I always paused the weight at least briefly on the bottom to prevent being injured. The stretch reflex action, when you get at the bottom, that can cause more muscle to contract and you can get hurt. So rather than that, pause the weight, control the weight, and press up under control. By slowing the weight down, you increase time under tension, which is also going to stimulate muscle growth, and it allows you to not get injured while training hard. After all, the goal is not only to train harder, you need to train smarter as well. If you train hard but you don't train intelligently, you very well could be injured, and who's making gains when they're injured?
Never mind the pre-contest period when you take anti-estrogens and all this other crazy shit, your chance of injury really skyrockets. You got to take care of yourself.
Also, if you're in competition prep, you're dieting, you're preparing for a show, and you're on anti-estrogens trying to dry out very low body fat levels, you're even more likely to get injured. You absolutely do not want to risk getting injured when you're 4 weeks out from a show and lowering your estrogen. When you have very low body fat levels and lower estrogen about to compete in a bodybuilding competition, that is the time when you're most likely to get injured. So please be careful. Less weight, more control, more gains.
Last one, more extended fatigue management.
After a bodybuilding show, a lot of competitors are going to go off cycle. You can't blast all the time. Well, you could, but you'd be a moron. So you go off cycle, perhaps at HRT doses, and at this time, your body can't heal and repair as fast as it used to. You may have injuries that have built up. You need to back off on all those heavy loads. Your joints, you might have pains in your arms, your elbows, your knees, shoulders. So at this point, you really need to take a break. When you're natural, you're not training as heavy because you're not as strong. And on the same extent, you're not injuring yourself as much. People who are enhanced are getting injured more often. They have tweaks, injuries, pains that won't go away. I'm no different. I'm someone who trained natural for well over 20 years. Not many people train for as long natural as I have. I've also trained enhanced for over 10 years. So I have experience in both. And I can tell you when I was natural, way fewer injuries, aches, and pains. When I was enhanced, sometimes it masked the pains. Once you stop the cycle, that's when you felt all the pains come on. While blasting, you feel pretty good. Oh yeah, my elbow's not so bad. But then the cycle, it comes to an end and you're like, what is this pain? So you have to lighten the load. Train a lot easier. Take recovery times. You're obviously going to be losing muscle during this recovery period, but you'll get it back. Once you go back on cycle, and I'm not saying to go on cycle, you know, I'm not a doctor, don't break the law, all this good stuff, don't ever do anything, yeah, we get it, don't do anything bad. This is just information, whatever. But if you were to go back on, probably gonna gain all that muscle real quick, muscle memory and so on. And so it's important to note that just because you're enhanced doesn't mean you can just train like a madman for 365 days straight without a day off. You might think you can, and the naturals probably assume so. Oh, you're enhanced, you can train 4 hours a day, never take a day off. Why would you think that? Just because you're enhanced doesn't mean you're never gonna get sore, never gonna be injured. If you're injured and sore, you still need to take the day off. You still have to progressive overload. And if you're overtraining, it's still bad. You can in fact overtrain when you're on PDs. When you're on PDs, you're a lot stronger and your body can recover and repair and build faster, but you're probably training heavier. So you're damaging the body more. So whether you're enhanced or natural, you still need to consider, are you recovered from your workouts? And if not, don't just assume you should go to the gym and train hard. You still need the day offs. You still need to do what you would do if you were natural. And so he addresses the comments. People say, if you're on gear, you don't need to deload. It's just not true. Just because you're on steroids doesn't mean you don't need to take time off. Doesn't mean you don't need to take a break. Doesn't mean you're always recovered. If you're on steroids, you can still be sore. You can still be injured. You can still need time off. If you're feeling burnt out from your workouts, mentally, physically, you go to the gym, you're dreading it, you can barely get a pump, you feel like garbage, you need to deload. You need to take some time off. When do I personally deload? Every time I get injured. Happens often. I'm breaking bones all the time, tearing muscles. When else? Whenever I go on vacation, when I'm traveling. If you get sick, take some time to yourself to train easier or not at all. Or if you're just not in the mood at that time. So for some people, that's enough. Like me. Other people, if you're constantly training harder than last time and you're burning yourself, you might need to take a deload more often. For me, this works for me. I don't know what will work for you, but I can tell you that if you're overtraining, it's not good and you need to take a deload.
There's this idea that gear is both a get out of jail free card for dumb shit that you're doing if you're on gear, and a get out of jail free card for saying dumb shit about people on gear. Or like, well, yeah, the only reason he does that is he's on gear. Most of that is literally just made up on the spot by people who have a grandiose sense of self-importance that they have to jack up by making fun of others.
And like Mike's saying, just because you're natural doesn't mean you should be making fun of people who are. You're not special just because you're natural. You're not special just because you're on gear. We are all the same. We're all circles. Some are enhanced, some are natural. So you can't just say, oh, you're on gear, you don't have to train hard. You just show up and you make gains. You don't need to know anything. It's not true. Just because you're on gear doesn't mean you shouldn't train intelligently. You need to train just as smart or smarter than those who are natural. You have a greater chance of getting injured. Your health on the inside, blood work and so on, probably not as good. And so people who are taking gear, you need to be more cautious, careful than those who are natural. Hope you learned something. Ending it here. GregDoucette.com for coaching. Greg Doucette IB Pro. Please watch the bloopers, the harder than last time supplements, including turkesterone. Everyone's talking about that. Click the link in the description. Also, I have a Circle Diet book, 160 plus pages. All my life's work explaining how to lose weight, keep it off, rest of your life. Training books, cookbooks, coaching plans, me and my team. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment for the algorithm, and until next time, I am out.